Hey family, welcome to the Love You More show. And do me a favor, hit that little notification bell, okay? Make sure that you click that on to make sure that you never miss an episode. And of course, make sure throughout the show you like, share, and you comment. I do hope you enjoy this show, and I'm looking forward to it. It's coming up next, flat out.
Next on the Love You More show.
Guys, listen, here's the bottom line. Adrienne was not in my life when things fell apart in our marriage. Everybody back off.
Now this vision is shattered and you have to bring this back to the children.
I remember saying to Mariah, I cannot guarantee that I'll always be your mother's husband, but I can always guarantee that I'm gonna be your father. I've met so many mentally ill senior pastors, bro. There's so much trauma there. People staying together just for what people think. Even in all of the upheaval in my life, man, I could cry saying this. He still let me hear his voice. Shocked me. And I just still knew when he said peace. When I was like, I'm thinking of marrying this lady. Here we are 7 years later in our relationship, and that's the energy we're still on.
Love you more.
Hey family, Willie Moore Jr. here, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Love You More show, a place where you can feel safe. It's designed for people who have been through relational misunderstanding, breakups, and divorce, and the journey they took to loving themselves more. Listen, I'm so thankful for all of the hundreds of thousands of people who watched last episode, and I want to thank you for subscribing. Of course, usually in the beginning of the show, I do this strong petition telling you, hey, subscribe. If you're new to the show, of course, I want you to do that. But we met our goal, over 100,000 people in less than 4 weeks. I honor you, I appreciate you, and it kind of lets me know that you feeling this thing in your shana now. You know, the one thing about being a visionary, KD, a lot of times you have these visions of what you want to do with a show, but I'm learning now with this new amazing team is that as much as I have the vision is just as much as we're going to follow the data. And the data says that you're enjoying it, and I appreciate you sharing this. In fact, if you don't mind, share this with as many people as possible. Text it to your auntie, your cousin them, and your TT them, okay? I appreciate it. Family, today I get the esteemed privilege to sit down with a gentleman that I've really seen evolve. And so today is kind of a full circle moment. I get the esteemed privilege to hang out with Dove Award winner, Stellar Award winner, Grammy Award. Listen, Israel Houghton is hanging out with me today. What's going on, champion?
Man, it's great to be with you. This is great.
Man, I appreciate it, bro.
Thanks, man.
Man, you know.
I always love sitting down with you.
Man, you know the thing is, I got a chance to speak to you last time. I think it was like COVID. And then after we got through COVID, it was always on Zoom.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad to really get the opportunity to hang out with you in person.
It's good to see human beings again in real time, real life. Yeah.
Man, you know, traditionally when we are on the show, I like to do an icebreaker. Not a question, but we use music. I want you to bring your attentions to the screen. Check this out.
Why are we waiting for the sun to go down? We both want it, so let's get it started right now. Time's of the essence, and I don't wanna waste mine. We should get together and make love in the daytime. I know you get tired of the same old same. Wait until the night come to do your thing. I've got a proposition for you ladies today. I wanna make love in the middle of the day. Say, wanna you used to knocking boots, how about I knock you out your socks? Make you feel like a queen when we in between them sheets, and keep you energized like some Xantrax 3, baby. Why are we waiting for the sun to go down? We both want it, so let's get it started right now. Time's of the essence, and I don't wanna waste mine. We should get together and make love in the daytime. 'Cause in the daytime, the sun can shine on the girl, and in the daytime, I see just how I want it, girl. Time's of the essence, and I don't wanna waste mine. We should get together and make love in the daytime.
Y'all make some noise in the building. Praise God. But you know, the story goes that a lot of couples don't necessarily go to counseling before they get the opportunity to get better.
Mm-hmm.
I chose to go to counseling before I decided to depart. You know, a few years ago, I was on radio, literally standing in the gap for you because I actually love you as a brother and saying, no, man, my brother, he did whatever he had to do to make sure that he handled this business correctly. In your former relationship, was there ever a time that you decided to do counseling and therapy and try everything? Because, sometimes when you're going through it, you kind of know on the inside when it's time to depart. But did you try to do everything that you could?
It was important to me to be able to look at my kids in the eyes and say, we did everything we could.
Yeah.
That was really important to me, because just to say, hey, it didn't work and we decided that I knew that answer would not suffice for my kids. Just the way they've been raised, we've always tried to have honest dialogue with each other. And so to be able to say, hey, this has been a challenge for us, but we also took the time to go to counseling and to really just kind of get the tools we needed to either stay together or to peacefully, pull apart. And so going through that process was very important to me. I would highly recommend it to any couple because, take the relationship out of it. Just, we've all heard the example of you. It doesn't matter how nice a car you have. If you don't service that vehicle, it might look good, but it might not perform. It might not run well because you haven't done the standard upkeep on it. Yeah. And so why wouldn't you do the same with a relationship, which is far more important than a vehicle?
Yeah. Israel, when I look at that, so I was, 17 years? I did 17. How long were you married before?
I was married almost 20, a little over 20, and 5 of those were in a state of separation.
How long did you know that it may need to be an opportunity for you guys to depart?
I knew very early on. Unfortunately, I think we made the decision to sort of, I don't know, fake it till you make it. I'm sure there was a better term for it, but there was, I've said this many times to people that I've talked to. I said you can't write IOUs to your relationship and expect that you're going to go get to that. You remember Dumb and Dumber when he's like, that's better than cash. Those are IOUs. And he's got this
right.
briefcase full of paper. It's like, there's no value in that. And so I can postpone the inevitable and go, we should deal with this. We should deal with this. We should deal with this until you've got a briefcase full of paper and you have no real, heft or weight to the value of your relationship. And then trying to dig out of that is really tough. But I knew very, very, unfortunately, very early on. And, that this was at a time when my ministry was kind of taking off. And so the self-preservation and the coward in me said, keep the optics going. And maybe this will figure itself out over time as you continue to write IOUs. And then one day you just got to have that honest conversation that goes, we didn't deposit this right. We didn't steward this right. We didn't deal with the things we had to deal with. And then when we did go to deal with some of the things, it always depends on how bad do you want help and what are you willing to do to get that help? Because if you're just willing to go to a session that says, this guy's a terrible guy and he's the whole reason for whatever's going on here, you're not going to get anywhere, even if that's actually true.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was fairly true. But to be able to say it takes 2 to work this thing out, and for the other party to kind of go, yeah, I'm not really interested in doing that. At some point, you just go, all right, man, we're gonna have to pivot here.
So when you do have to make that very, very tough decision, of course, you're a very smart guy. Like meeting you offline besides a radio interview, I was like, wait a minute, this guy's doing business, a strong D personality. To those of you who take the DISC assessment, you know that he's a driver, a person who actually has a strong opinion on where he's going, what he's going to do, visionary, having all of that. Like, what was it like for being a person who has a vision? Now this vision is shattered and you have to bring this back to the children. Because I know, like, I see you with the new baby and I'm like, oh, wow, he really loves children. And I know that love didn't just magically appear.
Sure.
Like, how do you present this new narrative to your children?
Well, my daughter Mariah's with me today, and I haven't had to introduce anything to her because she's like day one for me. So she's been attached to me at the hip since she was born. 27 years ago. I think though, I have 2. She has 2 younger siblings who didn't get as much from me. And that's probably the biggest regret of just like, okay, I'm out pursuing what I'm pursuing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I get these moments with them, but it's not nearly what it is right now with, say, Ever James, who I'm out here on tour, but they're flying out every single weekend just so we're together, because other 3-4 days is probably our max of like being apart from each other. We just don't like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm far more present this time. But knowing my personality and the way, like you said, I drive, it was very important to take that time, especially when we had to come to the realization that it was over, to really just galvanize our relationship and make sure that we were good. And that was, you know, that's the highest priority. I remember saying to Mariah, I cannot guarantee that I'll always be your mother's husband, but I can always guarantee that I'm going to be your father.
Yeah.
And so let's put the emphasis on that in our relationship.
Yeah. Israel, you know, I remember the day, Big Med is my producer at this time, and he messy. Because I'm not messy. I'm not on social media. I'm not doing all this stuff, not finding all this stuff. And he sends a text and he said, ooh, look at your boy. I said, look at my boy. He sends me a picture. It's you're in the ocean, and it's with Adrienne by Lon. The news comes out that you're with Adrienne, and it comes out in a way that's not so prim and proper as we do it in the kingdom community. They're actually looking for you. They're hunting out for this mysterious man. It becomes Israel Houghton. You have to make a public statement on Facebook, which I think you so eloquently wrote, and you didn't miss a comma, a period, and it was grammatically correct. I was like, goodness. How does Israel navigate this narrative where now I know you're so calculated that now the cat's out the bag and we have to play a little catch up on the announcement?
Yeah, I mean, since my divorce, I've made 2 statements. This is going back 8 years now.
Yeah.
I've made 2 statements. One, hey, you know, we've decided to divorce. We appreciate your privacy during this time. I made that statement months after we were actually divorced. I just wanted my kids to get through the holidays and, you know. Yeah. And so when I made that statement, people are like, oh, wow, this must be now and fresh and this just happened. And so, you know, a couple months later when they see me and Adrienne, they're like, oh, she must have broken up this relationship. Yeah. And so that was the second statement I made. And I just said, guys, listen, simple math, you know, if you'd like to do the math, feel free. But here's the bottom line. Adrienne was not in my life when things fell apart in our marriage. Yeah. There's somebody else responsible for that. And, you know, everybody back off. And since then, I've never made another statement. So it was important to, you know, to help my kids understand the timeline and that sort of thing. But for the most part, you know, some of the best advice I ever got was say what you have to say and then keep your mouth shut the rest of the time. And that's what I've done. And I've allowed God to vindicate. I've allowed God to validate. I've allowed God to, you know, renovate my life. And it was as painful as it was, Willie. I am so grateful for the process, man.
Yeah. I remember we're in LA. And I'm like, yo, let's have some lunch.
Yeah.
Because by now I've done 2 years of counseling and it's just not working. Like you said, a lot of people look and they're just like, oh, this just happened overnight. I'm like, well, this is a 5-year process. Yeah. Right? 2 years of counseling in the home, a year of separation. And I didn't know that I had anything that was worth value financially until I had to, you know, go through a 2-year divorce process. Right. And I was like, oh my God, like I would give anything to get out of this, you know, without all of this stuff going on. And I remember sitting there with you and I'm asking questions and, you know, strong, deep personality is kind of like, so are you thinking about this? And I remember you gave me the best advice and you told me just to stay true to your counseling and also stay true to yourself, man. Yeah. You know, because struggling with codependency, wanting to make everybody so pleased with everything that you do and having such a public persona in the Christian world that can be extremely unforgiving. It was almost like you being a beacon of hope of like, we can work after this, you know, because of course, you know, everything dies down. How did you deal with like just all of everything just shutting down, because our community is extremely unforgiving when we choose to make a decision that's really best for ourselves as it pertains to like marriage and relationships.
Yeah. I think a long time ago, people just felt like it was also their business. If you're a public figure, then it is also their business, whatever your business is.
Yeah.
And I think the older I get, having crossed 50 now.
What?
Yeah. That
Let's go 50.
That when you reach a certain place and you've been through stuff, man, you just, the what will people think of it all just loses its value. It loses its bite. Yeah. And at some point you go, 10 years from now, will all these people that I'm trying to please still be with me? Amen. Will they be riding with me? And if not, who is? And I'm going to just surround myself with the people that I am mutually connected to, that have my best interest at heart, whose interest I also have at heart. Yeah. And I'm just going to roll with them. And man, the freedom of having 500 friends whittled down to about 7 that would sound horrible to some people. It is the greatest reset in my life. And I've been able to, unlike Drake, I've been able to add some new friends, who are people who have kind of been through something. So like the age I grew up in church was sort of this very optics oriented, like never let them see you sweat. I've met so many mentally ill senior pastors, bro. Like, you know what I mean? And I say that almost comedically, but like there's so much trauma there and there's so much trying to keep the balance going and people staying together just for, what people think. It's like, I'm so concerned about worship leaders and pastors whose livelihood is attached to people's perceived version of their walk with God. Yeah. I don't think he's right with God. Take him off the platform. How does that guy feed his family? That kind of stuff is wild because of the optics. So when somebody goes, I'm getting divorced, the reason I waited so long to even pull that trigger, because I'm like, that's, in our business, that was career suicide. Yes. That's like, you're done. Yeah. Thank you for playing. You gave us 7 good years.
Good job.
Take care. You know, you might get a mention, right, in the ad, what's that section when people die during the doves and they show your video, they show your picture from 8 years ago. People are like, slideshow. Remember the friend of God guy, whatever. And then that's it. So it's like, I don't want that to be.
Remember the friend of God guy.
I don't want that to be the footnote to my story. What I want the footnote to be is like, this guy did good with what he had to work with. Yeah. And most people in 2016 in our industry pronounced him dead. And he's not dead. So God, there's a lesson in that when people put a period next to your name, God tends to put a comma under that period and turn it into a semicolon and say, I have more to say. The author of your story, if he puts a semicolon there, the semicolon is the purpose of that semicolon is to say, the author has more to say about this. Yeah. And I watched God do that. I watched people exclamation point myself. Yeah. And God just reconfigured that. And so every day really is a blessing, man. Every day is a blessing, I say this to my team often, like, the grind of, say, a tour or just whatever can feel exhausting sometimes until you realize, like, Mariah and I were walking through the concourse the other day and I said, who's selling out arenas? Yeah. Like, how fortunate has my life been that God is like, I still got more to say through you, man. And you're on this arena tour with your brothers and your sisters and your friends, and people are actually singing at the top of their lungs along to your songs. And it's like, at any point, God could have just said, I'm finished with you. Yeah. And it would have been expected. I don't think anybody would have been shocked by it. I would have just been another one of those guys that you go, remember that guy? What was his name again? Yeah. And it just passes right by. And instead, for whatever reason, God keeps refreshing the screen, man.
Man, you talked about the parts of you that people thought, like he's dead and it's over. I know going into a new relationship, when I see you now, it's like a total makeover. Yeah. It's like the epitome of who you connected to really makes a difference. Swag on 150,000. Got a chance to see this amazing glow up come. I want to just ask you what parts of you, if you can just be honest, like going into this relationship, because she's a lot different. I didn't get a chance to meet the mother of your children. It'll be like a screenshot at Lakewood and she, wave or whatever. But this woman is out. Yeah. Cheetah Girls on TV, just as successful, as you are and just as known in her community as you are. Like, talk a little bit about the mental adjustment you had to make when stewarding this type of woman correctly versus the woman that you had was more in the background and you were the champion. And everybody knows Israel, but that's Israel's wife.
Sure.
More Love You More podcast after this.
All relationships start off beautiful. The love is so intense in the beginning until life happens. No matter how disciplined you are, temptation is everywhere. And we all have to fight with our internal monsters. And sometimes we fall into the trap and we hurt the ones we say we love the most. As you get older, loved ones pass away and you're left to live life with a void that you never really anticipated. For some reason, people never talk about the parts of you that die when your loved one leaves the earth. It's so easy to lose who you are in the midst of all of this. I lost myself because I forgot to love myself. I'd like to take you on a journey in hopes that you can learn how to love you more.
Wow. To check out the first episode, log on to loveyoumore.com.
Like, talk a little bit about the mental adjustment you had to make when stewarding this type of woman correctly versus the woman that you had was more in the background and you were the champion and everybody knows Israel, but that's Israel's wife.
Sure. I think I think his ways are higher than our ways is what I would say. Yeah. I think when we met and we were friends and hung out with our little friend group, we were so honest with each other in our conversations. Those conversations were like, not the conversations you would have with someone who you're trying to impress for a future relationship.
Oh, so you wasn't putting like that bad game on her?
No, bro, at all.
Well,
first of all, I remember telling her, like, there's no chance in the world that I'm ever going to get married again.
Really?
I told her that within a few weeks of us knowing each other. And she's like, why not? And I said, because I'm clearly not good at this. Like, this is this is not my thing, man.
Yeah. I'm gonna sing. I'm gonna sing.
And so she's like, well, I think you will. So much so that she sent me, I think I've told you this story, but she sent me on dates with friends of hers.
Yeah, you told me that.
She's like, you should go to lunch with my friend or whatever. Yeah. I was like, okay, so we'd go and it ends and she'll call and go, hey, how did it go? And I was like, she's cool. She's pretty, but not really, my thing. So she'd call them and they'd be like, yeah, he's cool. He's funny, whatever. He's nice. He paid for the meal, but, it's not really my. And she'd be like, what do you mean? He's this, he's that. She's like fighting for my honor with her friends. Finally, her friends were like, you date him. And that's really how this thing.
So years later, everything.
She would tell me everything. I would tell her everything. Like, it's not the kind of stuff you send your representative to say. It's like it was so unfiltered. And she'd be like, hey, this dude from the Philadelphia Eagles is kicking it to me. What do you think of him? And I was like, well, he broke the record last year. So, I mean, he's dope. He's a player, right? Yeah. And she'd be like, yeah, but he sent red roses and I don't like red roses. So, and I was like, so that's it? He didn't know that. He just sent red roses and you're like off with his head. She's like, yeah, kind of. So like that was the kind of hang we had. Yeah. It was just very matter of fact and very easy. So because we had gotten so much honesty between us, that was fairly jeopardizing because it was very open and honest. And
when did the light bulb go off? Like, where were you when you
when
was
a
like,
mutual friend of ours,
wait a minute,
mutual friend of ours named Angie said, I see something with you too. And so A confided in her and said, well, I think I like him. You know, I think there's something there. And Angie's like, the only way you're going to know is if you kiss him. And the kiss was in Mexico that you referenced.
Whenever with the
yes,
long...
that was the first time. So we had decided, okay, let's start dating. And, you know, the rest
So she
is
felt
sorta,
something or did you feel something?
Yes.
You did.
Yes. No, I mean, it became very obvious. And then when the storm came of like her PRs calling her, like, they want to know who this guy is. What's going on? You didn't tell us, you know. I even told her, I said, you should just say, hey, this is fresh. He's just recently got out of a relationship and we're just friends and killed it. And she's like, you've been my friend for 3 years. I'm not going to suddenly not be your friend now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of at that point, I was like, oh, I'm going to marry you. Like, it was like.
That moment, it was like.
Kind of, yeah. And 7 months later, we were married, so.
So you come to the station. And like, it's high. Like, it's hot. Like, and you ain't, you know, if y'all don't know Israel ain't talking about nothing. He gonna stick to the script. But he feels comfortable in here. It's like the first time me and you really get in the room together. And we're like hanging and crystals with A and y'all kicking it. And then when you left, I said, that's gonna work. That's gonna work. Because it was so public, like, well, he's this and he's that. And I just felt this energy. And he was like, well, I'm getting married. And then like 11/11 came out. And I was like, oh, he did it for real. Like, it was on. But I just knew, like, it was something magical that you all had in that room.
And listen, man.
It's like I had never seen you smile this much. Like, he had,
I
like,
wasn't
giddy,
smiling much for a long
like giddy smile. You know, like, he's not a goofy smiler type of guy. Deep personality under contained. He just kept smiling. I was like, he really like her.
I mean, listen, I've always, if I'm comfortable, I'm going to be funny and loud and extroverted to some degree around a certain group of people.
Yeah.
But for the most part, yeah, I am fairly introverted, fairly shy. I don't do well with a lot of attention. You know, I don't do well with people swarming and going, can you come here, talk to my mom. You know, I try my best and I try to be gracious in those moments. I've learned a lot from Adrienne in that. She's the best I've ever seen in situations like that. She's never rattled. She has time for everybody. She has the most generous spirit I've ever seen. So I learn from that and adapt to that some. But the smile is real, man. The laugh is real. The joy is real. Somebody sent me a tour book. Just ironic that we're on tour now, but like a tour book from a tour I did in 2009. And it was my old drummer, Mike Clemens, and he's like, yo, look at this picture and look at this picture.
I wasn't gonna do you like that.
And I was like, he's like, you look
younger,
20 years older than you are now in that picture.
I just looked at that this morning.
And
I wasn't gonna do you like that.
And I'm like, but I got a gray beard. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, bro, you look young and vibrant and happy. And I was like, that's all true. But it's wild to see something from 14 years ago and look older and just less healthy and just less.
I'm talking about with the little thing right there.
Yeah.
I was going to put
the little soul patch?
With the little soul patch boy. I was like, maybe I put this in post instead of just doing it.
Thanks for not doing that. Nobody needs to go look that up, by the way.
So now, so here's the thing. Do you suggest mature men to date younger? So did you wait for that, or did you just kind of let nature just take its course?
I think if I had waited, I'd still be waiting, if I'm honest.
So you went for it.
Yeah, I think I'd still be waiting. I went for it because even in all of the upheaval in my life, man, I could cry saying this. He still let me hear his voice. Shocked me. Literally shocked me. And I just still knew when he said, peace. I knew it. And it like peace when it made no sense to have peace. I felt it. When I was like, I'm thinking of marrying this lady. Peace. And I'm looking at 7 years later and going, I don't want to get too detailed with it, but like the moments we have now are the moments that I suppose people experience, like when they're dating and it's hot and heavy and it's just crazy. And it's just like, I'm there. It's like, I won't sleep for hours just to, here we are 7 years later in our relationship. And that's the energy we're still on. And I'm not saying that for optics. I'm not saying that for anything, but that's just real. And so I go back to the moment of walking through my little 1-bedroom apartment and God going, I'm with this. And it not making sense to anyone but God and to me and to Adrienne. And I look back now and go, hands down, the best decision I've ever made.
So you had to go live in a 1-bedroom apartment after all of that?
Yeah. It was interesting to leave a
compound,
very large house
leave a compound
in Malibu to, a 1-bedroom little apartment. And I've told this story before, but I had room in there for a couch and a little keyboard. And there's a little bedroom in there and bathroom kitchenette or whatever. And I passed that keyboard every day for months. And God would be like, sit down and sing something. And I'd be like, nah, I don't feel like I have anything to sing. I don't feel like I have anything to say. And yet every day he'd be like, just sing to me. Just me. Ain't nobody here. And it was that kind of matter-of-fact conversation daily until one day I sat there and I just started playing and I could hear and feel him go, yeah. And it took me back to my first weeks as a worship leader, 19 years old, not knowing what the heck I was doing. And just sitting put my piano in my kitchen. I've told this story a million times. Sat at that piano and just worshiped God for hours. I didn't even know what I was doing. Knew about 3 or 4 chords on the piano and just tried to work it out. But in those moments, I had the most incredible, pure encounters with God. Mm-hmm. And here I am at my lowest place. All money's gone. I'm getting calls from friends of mine in green rooms at conferences going, yo, they're killing you back here, Doc. They're talking about you over this fried chicken for hours. And you're like, that guy? I thought that guy was my friend. That dude just texted me yesterday. Yeah, he murdering you. And so you're at your lowest and God is going, would you just sing to me? And there's this mentality that goes, yeah, but there's no lights and there's no microphone in here and there's no crowd to go, woo. And he's like, yeah, it's just me. And you're reminded of this is how I started. And I was far more interested in being alone with God than I was on a platform. And I watched that whole thing flip back to where I couldn't wait now to just sit at that piano, sit at that keyboard in that little apartment and just trust God again.
Yeah.
And hear him say ooh and ah as opposed to crowds saying ooh and ah.
What was the song that came out of that moment?
Whoa, hey, do me a favor. Like, comment, and share. Just like it real quick.
Come on, show me you appreciating this show. Do it now. Thank you. Mm-hmm. What was the song that came out of that moment that we may not know came out of that moment?
Feels Like Home.
Yeah.
Feels Like Home. And it's not even a single. It's not something we heavily singled. I mean, we named the record after it and stuff. But there was just, that song is very autobiographical, just prodigal sort of returning. Feels Like Home came out of that. But almost inevitably, when I'd sit at the piano and felt like I had nothing to say, generally one of 2 songs would come out. Great Is Thy Faithfulness or To Worship You I Live.
Hey, man, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one I got to know you before I got to know you. It was kind of weird when you said it. It was like, hey, man, I remember that.
That's that one. And that's one of the strangest songs because it never feels old when I sing it. Never. I do it every night on this tour. And it never feels like, I got to sing this song again, So it's got some renewable quality on it.
Yeah, we're sitting on the interview. You guys are in New York, and I'm on with Abe, and we're talking, we're interviewing.
Oh, yeah.
We're
Feels Like Home. Yeah, you were involved in that.
So we're talking, and we're doing that. And she says, wait, Willie, because the doorbell rings. This man comes in with all these flowers. And I was like, hey, Israel, did you do that because I was on? She said, no, this is what he does all the time. This is what he does. It's roses. It's roses. And I'm just like.
They weren't red, I could tell you that.
Definitely not red. Definitely not red. She's like, wait. And she has to go and do all of this. And I was like, wow, he still pursues her like that. What would you say to a guy who may have been through a lot of trauma in his former relationship, may not being the person who is so in pursuit because, maybe he pursued and it wasn't received well?
I think I made peace pretty early with, this is who I am. And whoever's down with that, great. And whoever's not, I think that's okay too.
Yeah.
What I found in Adrienne was a partner who was down. Like, she hadn't really had, she calls me Ricky Romance a lot.
Yeah, that's what she said. I wasn't going to say that.
She never really had a Ricky Romance.
Right coming out of my mouth.
And
it didn't feel right to call you what she called you, man of God.
Ricky Romance. And I was like, I mean, at some point it goes from being a thing you do to just being who you are.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just who I am. So I'm always going to pursue her. At her job on Mondays, they know. Every Monday, the start of the week, there's gonna be 22 white roses in her room.
Not red.
Huh?
Not red.
Not red. They're white, and there's 22 of them. 11,
Why does she
11.
like red roses?
I don't know. She's working that out in therapy.
So that's a good question. So therapy. So are you still going to therapy too?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you go together by yourself?
Both. So I meet with an individual, and this individual also has permission to speak to us both.
Got it.
And so she can call him and he can call me, like, hey, Adrienne just called me and what's going on? And we've got that. And then we have a couple's, like that quarterly for real, like get under the hood.
Yeah.
And it's making a huge difference for sure. We're in that 7-year, stretch. And they say every 7 years, you definitely better take a harder look at what's going on. And we've had the added blessing of the stress of the last 7 years trying to have a child.
Yeah.
So you're talking just the IVF journey and the fertility journey has hurt couples, has split couples apart. I have friends that didn't survive it.
Yeah.
And for us, it had the opposite effect. It like galvanized us. It so intertwined us. Like, this is our battle. This is our struggle, but this is also our blessing.
Yeah.
And so having therapy and having the tools to navigate a lot of those, intensives, to have 1 year where we're bi-coastal, in New York and in LA with a toddler, who just started walking. It's not the easiest. It'll test you. It'll stretch you for sure. But I think, to your point, to have that kind of chemistry with somebody who just really completes your story, who strengthens where you're weak and vice versa, and you guys celebrate that with each other, you can't beat it.
Man, Israel Houghton, I always honor and appreciate your time. What's next on the horizon? I know you're on tour. Can you just kind of share a little bit of some of the back things? Because everything your feet are involved, you may not see your hands all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know you're executive producing different things, always having your eye on the pulse of what Hollywood is doing. Luckily, the strike is over, and so it's time to really get back to work. What's
the writer's strike is over.
Yeah, the writer's strike. Yeah.
I also learned early on, especially to bring this full circle, when you're like, when did you know it was kind of time to go? Well, I knew that a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
And so I really started prepping even over a decade ago for, there's a good chance that if you get divorced, everything falls off. Livelihood, opportunities, etc. So I made careful investments, leading up to that, and just, making sure that my kids were always taken care of. That was kind of the most important piece to me. And so to diversify that and not just be, my livelihood depends on if people like me that month and I'm not in the news for something crazy, and I can still come to your church and sing my 4 songs. You know what I mean?
Right.
And now I'm very grateful that I don't have to do that in order to live.
Yeah.
And so that's just wisdom and, diversification and real estate and things like that are very important.
Yeah, because when I was with you, that phone was hitting. It was like, wait, da ba 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 ba. I was like, wait a minute, Israel's not the normal worship leader. He is out there doing some amazing things. But let me just say this, man. I really do appreciate you stopping in and being able to share your journey. And I feel really honored. Initially I thought your gift was music, but now I know that your gift is really to be transparent enough to encourage people. And I appreciate that, man.
Here's why, man. I remember calling Bishop Jakes, I'll end with this, when everything went down. I was like, man, I'm so stupid. And he goes, no, you are so human.
I love it.
And I just went, man, everybody needs to hear that. Because there are superheroes among us that are actually just human beings and have figured out a way to make you feel comfortable when you see them publicly or hear them publicly, or they perform or preach or whatever. But the truth is they're self-medicating, they're fighting addiction, they're in relationships that are toxic, and it's all those kinds of things. And sometimes I just go, hey man, I didn't go through the hell I went through just to go, hey, I made it. Yeah. Yo, good luck. Yeah. But instead to go, hey, there's actually hope here. And I discovered that God is good all the time, and all the time God is good when I needed him the most, when I expected him not to be good. Yeah. And instead he was, and so kind, and continues to be. And I think people just need to know that I think a lot of us got the wrong view of God, whether that was taught to us wrong or whatever. And he is a good father. And to be able to emulate that, hopefully as a believer and in the life of my children, that's what I want to do, and encourage somebody along the way.
Man, congratulations on this new life, man.
Thank you, man.
Listen, I don't even have to put a bow on this. Do me a favor. Hit your subscribe. Share this with as many people as possible. My prayers that you were encouraged today. I'm so honored that we get an opportunity for people to be hot, honest, open, and transparent. And I don't know about you, but my Sha-Na-Na is blessed right now. I'm so thankful that I got a chance to hang out with the one and only Israel Houghton. Coming up here really, really soon, there's some new things that are happening with our live shows. So you're going to get an opportunity to get a live experience. We're going to have callers call in. We're going to sit down and really, really answer all your questions. And there'll be a plethora of surprise guests who step in, whether it's Zoom or they might just pop up on set. But I tell you what, I'm going through my Rolodex with anybody that I know who can add value to you in the areas of misunderstandings in relationships, breakups, divorce, and their journey to loving themselves more. Share this with as many people as possible. Subscribe. Flat out. Yes, Lord. I got to keep it real with you. But what I want you to do is I want to make sure that you share this, you comment, you click like, engage with us. Listen, everybody wants to be celebrated, not just tolerated. Don't just tolerate us. Celebrate us by liking, sharing, and commenting. Can't do it without you. That's all you got to do. Just click it. Do that for me. See you next week. Flat out.
Love you more, love you more, love you more.